Who was Olive Thomas? This week we're going to find out. She was considered the Elizabeth Taylor of her time, the 1920s. She had a wild and feisty nature and a very short and tragic end from poisoning. Hi everyone, and welcome to Tragic Hollywood on the Town's Star of the Week. This week we're going to be talking about a star who was known as the Elizabeth Taylor of her era, and that would be the 1920s. She had violet eyes and a wild disposition, a feisty disposition, just like Elizabeth Taylor, and she was considered the most beautiful actress of her day, other than perhaps maybe Barbara Lamar. So her name was Olive Thomas. I wrote about her in my book, my first book. Oh, too bad it looks like it's upside down, but yeah, this is her. And let's talk a little bit about Olive Thomas today. But before we do, please do all the things. Please like and subscribe. Check out my books on Amazon. Check out my Facebook page, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead. Also, I'd like to ask you a few questions regarding who you would like to see profiled on Tragic Hollywood on the Town on YouTube. I'm open to suggestions. I usually profile a star who died that week, which is the case with the two stars I'm going to be doing this week. But you let me know who you'd like to see on this channel, and I will definitely take it into consideration. Also, it would be nice if you would let me know what you thought of my video and whether or not you knew Olive Thomas, knew of her. Nobody actually knew her who's alive still. Knew of her work, saw any of her movies, or heard of her in any way. So leave the comments down below. Thank you. Like, subscribe, and most importantly, please watch my videos. Thank you so much. All right. Let's get into who Olive Thomas was. Olive Thomas was born in a place called Charleroi, Pennsylvania, which is about 21 miles from Pittsburgh. She had a hard life from the very start. She was born into poverty, and to top it all off, her father died when she was very young. And she basically, when she was 14, she had to go to work to help support the family. So she worked at a few department store jobs, including Kaufmann's. And Kaufmann's, by the way, was a very nice department store at the turn of the last century. It was considered sort of like the Bullocks or the Neiman Marcus of its day. And so she worked in order to help support her family. So from the very beginning, she had a rough beginning, and I'm going to read a little bit about this in my book. Olive, or Ollie, as her friends affectionately called her, began life in depressing, industrialized Pittsburgh, which is actually, she began life in a suburb of Pittsburgh, but her family eventually moved closer to Pittsburgh. Her father died when she was just a child, and she was forced to go to work at the age of 14 to help support her family. So basically, in order to escape this life, she got married very young. She married Bernard Thomas when she was 16, probably to escape her miserable life. And the marriage was unhappy, and she separated from him 2 years later, moving to New York. While working in the department store on Harlem, she entered a contest for the most beautiful girl in New York, and she won. The beauty title led to several prestigious modeling jobs for such well-known magazines as Vogue and the Saturday Evening Post. She also began posing nude for several illustrators and artists of the day, apparently little troubled by the strict moral code in society at that time. She caught the attention of Florence Ziegfeld, who immediately put her in his notorious Midnight Follies. The Midnight Follies weren't exactly the straight up regular Ziegfeld Follies. These happened at midnight, late at night, and were far more risque in nature. Hence the separation of the title and the reason for the late night hour. A dubious affair staged after hours on the rooftop garden of the New Amsterdam Theater. And the Follies were nothing like the Ziegfeld Follies. The audience for the Follies were usually wealthy older men. Well, what about that? Seems times never change. Who put on a lot of money to see very young girls prance around in almost nothing. How scandalous is that? It was soon clear that Ollie was the toast of the town. She became the star of these lurid midnight follies, to the delight of wealthy men who attended them. She was gifted a $10,000 pearl necklace by a wealthy ambassador, which is roughly the equivalent of $200,000 today. She was gifted furs. She was gifted diamonds. They proposed lurid things, and I'm sure that she did some of them because she had no qualms in doing this. It was a wild party at this time. This was before the 1920s. This was when cocaine and heroin were still legal, when Coke was putting cocaine in their soft drinks. So there was a nice, big, huge party with the booze flowing. And yeah. So she threw herself into this party lifestyle, and she very quickly got a reputation for being a party girl because she was a party girl. She was definitely a party girl. But she was so stunning that she had these men throwing themselves at her feet. They literally drooling all over this 16, 18-year-old. I think she was 18 when this was going on. So she was legal, guys. It's okay. She was 18. But there was one particular suitor, that mattered a little bit more than all the others. She became Ziegfeld's personal favorite, and she became his personal mistress. So, even though he's married, she pretty much had it made. She could have left the Follies, retired happily as the beautiful mistress of a very wealthy and prestigious man. But that wasn't Olive's fate, because a little man from Hollywood came along, attended the Midnight Follies one night, saw Olive, and absolutely flipped his lid over her. He became obsessed with her. He began courting her. He began lavishing her with roses by the dozens every night after the show. He threw jewelry at her. He took her to lavish places, and he bought her expensive gifts. This guy didn't have that much money. We are talking about the man, the actor, Jack Pickford. Jack Pickford was the very notorious younger brother of Hollywood sweetheart Mary Pickford. Mary Pickford was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood at the time. She modeled herself as being this very moral and righteous woman in a sea of decadence and depravity that Hollywood was at that time. She was the sweetheart, the darling, the innocent. Her brother was completely the opposite. He was notorious drunk, partier, irresponsible. Left a wake of destruction in his path. But when he set sights on poor Olive Thomas, that was the end of her relationship with the Midnight Follies. That was the end of her relationship with Ziegfeld. She was swept off her feet by Jack, the handsome, charismatic Jack. And he swept her away to the West Coast and Hollywood. which of course she was successful at because she was gorgeous. And you didn't have to have a lot of acting skills in the 1920s to make it. As long as you had a beautiful face and you could go and yeah, you could pretty much make it in Hollywood back then. There was no dialogue. Whatever your voice sounded like, nobody cared because nobody heard it. She was immediately accepted, embraced by Hollywood. They loved her. She was gorgeous. She was written up in all the papers as being one of the most beautiful actresses. Everyone loved her. Oh, everyone except Mary Pickford. Mary Pickford really didn't like Olive. She thought she was lowbrow, low class, not good enough for Jack. Okay, this is a woman who also came from the tenements in the Bronx or whatever. Okay, she had no right to get on her high horse, but she was Hollywood royalty at the time. I'm going to read this part in my book about what Mary Pickford thought of Olive. Mary did not think Olive, with her working class upbringing and dubious follies career, a suitable wife for her baby brother, not cut from a cloth of the quality required to be admitted to her family. She completely ignored the fact that her brother was a notorious drug addict and philanderer on his own, who was already dealing with syphilis as a result of his frequent promiscuous behavior. She wrote in her autobiography, I regret to say that none of us approved of the marriage at the time. Mother thought that Jack was too young, and Lottie and I thought that Olive, being in musical comedy, belonged to an alien world. Obviously, musical comedy was a euphemism for burlesque, which is just one step away from prostitution. So, yeah. America's Sweetheart didn't like Olive Borden very much. Jack didn't care. He was obsessed with her. They got married. It was in all the papers. They proceeded to hit up just about every wild party they could hit up. Olive took driving lessons and learned to drive. Unfortunately, not very well, because apparently she wrecked her car several times. They were a couple of just wild kids, almost like teenagers, doing whatever they wanted. They had money, they had fame, they had beauty, and the world was their oyster. In part 2, we're going to find out what happened to Jack and Olive, and if it was all just a big illusion, a big publicity stunt, and why Olive ended up dying at the very young age of 26 from mercury poisoning.